You're listening to the Business Brain Food Podcast. This is episode number 102.
Welcome to the business podcast that gives you direct access to the world's leading experts on everything you need to know to help you build a better business. Be the first to know about future shows and get access to free downloads plus exclusive business content by subscribing at actioncoachanz.com today. Now here's your host, Ben Futrell.
Well, g'day and welcome back to another episode of Business Brain Food. This, my friend, is the podcast that's 100% devoted to taking you and your business to the next level. And the good news is, it doesn't matter whether you're brand new to this business thing, so maybe you're just scratching that entrepreneurial itch, or maybe you're like myself and you've been in business for a long time and you've got the scars, wounds and stories to prove it. There's always something new we can do to take our business to the next level, and today's absolutely no different. So thanks again for tuning in. Before we do get stuck straight into this, I'm really excited, by the way, really excited. And I know I say that a lot, but let me tell you, today's guest is one of Australia's, probably is Australia's biggest customer service expert. And I'm really grateful to have him on the show. We'll talk about Martin in a second. I'll introduce you to Martin. Before I do that, I want to thank our sponsor who has made today's podcast possible. Our sponsor today is Bartercard. Now, would you like free advertising for your business? Who wouldn't? Our friends at Bartercard can help. They're an exciting marketplace where businesses exchange goods and services without the use of cash, and it's designed to help you conserve your cash, increase your profitability, and attract new customers. Bartercard have been supporting Aussie businesses for over 25 years, and they help fill up any downtime, empty seats, and spare capacity. Now, they've got an offer just for Business Brain Food listeners where you can join Bartercard and you gain free advertising and access a $5,000 interest-free line of credit. They'll promote your company to thousands of local, national, and international businesses who are all potential customers as part of your membership. And every new customer brought to you by Bartercard brings new income on top of what you're already receiving, which will help you increase your profit margins. As a member of Bartercard, you'll have access to these very special benefits: free advertising to attract new customers, increased cash flow, increased profits, monthly networking events, and that $5,000 interest-free line of credit to spend in your business. You've got to go to go.bartercard.com.au/actioncoach and register you're interested. That's go.bartercard.com.au/actioncoach. The offer for the line of credit is Bartercard Trade Dollars. Credit is subject to credit approval and only available through membership in Bartercard. Thank you, Bartercard, for supporting the podcast. And very exciting. You know, I think I've mentioned a couple of times now that you can become a sponsor. If you're interested in becoming a sponsor, just shoot me a message, ben@maxmyprofit.com.au. And say, I'm interested in sponsorship and we'll get you on board. We've got some new sponsors coming up. Really excited about that. It's great. So many people want to support the podcast. It helps us produce a quality show week in, week out, and, it brings us the best guests. It's awesome. So thank you so much for that. All right, today's guest, Martin Grunstein. Now, customer service is one of those things that I think is vitally important in business. It's too easy to, I guess, put it on the back burner, and it's an important part of marketing. When you think about marketing business, marketing is far more than just advertising. And we can look at some of the world's greatest businesses that have been highly successful based on their customer service. And if you look at things like Apple or McDonald's is a classic example. McDonald's is just a hamburger shop, but let's face it, you could make a better hamburger. There's not one person that I would go and ask about whether or not they can make a hamburger that would say no. Everyone would say, yes, Ben, I could make a better hamburger than McDonald's. However, could you build a more successful business? Because they have over 30,000 stores in 100 and something different countries, and all they do is make hamburgers. Pretty amazing. Yet, you know what sort of experience you're going to get when you get there. You expect to have your fries within a minute. If it's any longer than a minute wait, you'll get upset, right? So they've got these customer service standards they've set and that you expect, and it is what has built their business, right? You can go to the toilet in a McDonald's without buying anything, without having to drag a hubcap with a key attached to it, because they trust you, right? They've said, you know what, let's just trust our customers to come in. And, you don't even have to buy anything. No one questions you. I know myself, I've been on the road, I've gone in. I think that's great customer service. They're just showing you the way. They're showing you this is how customer service can be. Don't have the best product, don't always have the best service, but it's consistent, right? So I think that's the key from there, the story they're telling. Apple, another great example. You go to Apple Store, and I won't say too much because me and Martin talk a bit about Apple, but it's a great experience, right? So, customer service is vital to the success of any business. And it can be the demise of a business as well if customer service is bad. And if you have a look at, an industry can be tarnished by the service of just a few. You look at industries like car sales, for example. Used car salesmen had a bad rap. I'm sure there were some great ones out there that used to hate the fact that we tarred them all with the same brush. So customer service is a big thing. You look at social media now, it's easy to give feedback. I've, just the last few days on my Facebook feed, there's one guy I'm connected to. He was traveling from down south in Tasmania up to the Gold Coast. He's a speaker. And every day he posted a video for, I don't know, somewhere between 3 and 5 minutes about a bad experience he had with a service provider. One of them was an airline. He had a cafe. He had, he just had, every day he had a video. And whilst that annoys the crap out of me, if you're listening, please don't make any more videos whinging for 3 minutes. Put a bit of positivity into our lives. But that's what's going on, right? So he's making these videos. He's telling the world, and he's fairly well followed. He's telling the world about the bad experience he had. And even if only 200 people watch that, that's bad advertising for those businesses. TripAdvisor, ProductReview.com, Womo, Facebook reviews, all these sites are out there. Google reviews. People can leave their feedback if they're having a bad experience. So you want to make sure that you do something different. The other thing me and Martin talk about that I think is paramount for you to listen to and really grasp is that people are blaming the internet for the demise of their business, saying that people can buy it cheaper on the internet. And I think, you know what, that's something that is true. People can buy it cheaper on the internet, but there's a lot of things the internet can't do that you can do. So we're going to talk a bit about that. So my guest today is Martin Grunstein. He is Australia's customer service expert, and when the media wants an expert opinion on customer service, they call Martin. He's one of Australia's most successful speakers. He's been booked as the keynote speaker for major conferences throughout Australia. He's appeared regularly on TV, The Project, A Current Affair, Today Tonight, Switzer, on radio, ABC, 2UE, 2GB, 4BC, 6PR, many, many other stations. He's very entertaining. You know what I love about Martin? He's like me. He's a true Aussie, and you'll hear this in his chat, but he's spoken at over 2,500 conferences and meetings. He's been presenting and training business people to increase their profitability through improved customer service for a long, long time. I think you're really going to enjoy this interview. So without any further delay, let's get Martin onto the Business Brain Food podcast.
Learn more to earn more.
So joining me today for episode 102 is Martin. Welcome to the Business Brain Food podcast, Martin.
Good morning, Ben.
So good to have you on the show. Now, every guest gets asked this very same question when I get them on the show, and you're not going to escape that, and that is for you to share something quirky about yourself.
It's time for something quirky. And now, something quirky.
I am a sadly addicted golfer, and if I was any better at golf, I would give up the speaking business in a heartbeat. I've been playing for 40 years, and I'm not getting any better, sadly.
I think after 40 years, you must be better than you were 40 years ago.
Maybe better than 40 years ago, but I haven't reached that level where I can give up everything else and just play every day.
My take on golf is that it just ruins a good walk, so I don't bother.
Well, I tell you what, 95% of the time it does that for me, but it's only sad hope and addiction and optimism that gets me going back.
Great stuff, great stuff. Well, tell me, maybe give the listeners a bit of an insight into how you got to where you are in, I know you do a lot of public speaking, but you're an expert or considered an expert in customer service. So how did you end up being in that position?
Well, I got in the business back in the 80s. I was sitting in marketing at Colgate Palmolive, and I couldn't make a decision to save my life. Everyone from here to New York had to agree with you to get anything done, and I got a bit frustrated. And about many years ago, a doctor friend of mine said to me, I got fed up telling people 15 times a day there's nothing wrong with them. And back in the 80s, the only motivational speakers were Americans. He said, why don't we have a crack and form an Australian business and do that? So I threw my career in a heartbeat. We set it up together. He pulled out 3 weeks after we started because his wife wanted him to be a doctor and not a speaker, and I've been doing it myself ever since. Started teaching initially the mental side of the game and working with sports people before I went into business. And when the recession came in 1991, people stopped paying for that. And I got into the customer service area, which was pretty ordinary in this country, starting looking at what people could do to increase their service delivery and make a dollar, and it took off like wildfire. The people who did it got results out of it, And unfortunately, the landscape is so poor out there that the ones who get it right make a lot of money. So for the last 25 years, 26 years, I've been doing stuff purely on customer service.
Yeah, okay, interesting. And I guess one of the questions that is on my mind is how has the internet changed how important customer service is? Because I think, people can quickly give you a bad rap online, can't they?
Yeah, well, look, the internet has changed. The major way it's easier for consumers to get revenge than it was before. The old experience used to be if you have a good experience, you tell 2 people. You have a bad experience, you tell 20. Well, now if you have a bad experience, you tell 20,000 or 20 million through Facebook, TripAdvisor, YouTube, whatever. So there is the consumer has more power than they ever had before. But the interesting thing as far as the internet changing the customer service scape, I do quite a bit of work in retail, and a lot of retailers say, the internet is really killing their business. Well, I don't think internet's a threat to retail. Retail's a threat to retail. If I have a good experience, shopping is a social experience, and if I'm treated well in a retail store, well, I'll go back there. But if I receive no information or I'm treated with lack of respect or lack of acknowledgement, a lot of people are saying, gee, if I'm not going to get any service, I may as well get it on the internet where it's 30, 40, 50% cheaper anyway.
Yeah, and I guess that's a great point, isn't it? I think, that's interesting you say that. So retailers are going to be, what was that you said? Retailers are retail.
Well, retail's the threat to retail. The internet is not the threat to retail. Retail's the threat to retail.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because the last time I saw somebody really complaining about the internet, it was Jerry Harvey, and he's a pretty big player in the retail game. Do you think he needs to pick up his game as far as the way they service their customers?
Absolutely. Look, everyone does. The people, it's very easy for retail, and it's not unique to retail, all aspects of business. It's very easy. You feel a lot better about yourself blaming the internet than blaming your own lack of service.
Yeah.
Of course, that's easier to blame someone else. But at the end of the day, there are still people walking in and out of retail stores getting poor experiences, lack of acknowledgement, lack of product knowledge, lack of empathy, and whatever. The retailer has to come to one or two conclusions. Either it's the internet's fault and I can't do anything about it, or if I got off my arse and trained the staff and treated people with more dignity and respect, maybe I could make more money. Most people think it's easier to choose the former than the latter.
Yeah. And do you think that in a buoyant market that people get a bit lazy or complacent, I guess, with customer service because you can get away with it?
Well, sadly, over 30 years, I don't think it changes in a buoyant market or a tough market. I actually thought, say, for example, with the GFC came and things were tough there, customer service wasn't any better when times were bad than it was when times were good. I don't fully understand why that is. If you can't motivate people with profits, it's hard to work out what it is that will motivate people. But I believe customer service in this country, from my experience since the early 90s, has been a constant. It hasn't been good, and there haven't been any areas of marked improvement across the board. There are individual companies who've done well, but across the board, I don't think service has been any better today than it was 25 years ago. Yeah,
it's interesting. I look at, quite often I look for things on the internet, and I've come across a couple of sites. One of them is, I think, productreview.com.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you know what? I decided for fun just to look up some of the major players like Telstra and the big four banks, and their ratings are atrocious.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Have you got any idea, Martin, how they stay in business?
Well, they stay in business because they're big, not because they're good. That fundamentally. I mean, I do customer service workshops, and I get people to tell stories of crappy customer service, and the two biggest bugbears in Australian business are Telstra and Qantas. I would hear more negative customer service stories about the Telstra and Qantas than any two other companies. Yet Telstra keeps talking about how it has, the greatest customer service ethos. I just believe they don't care. If Telstra really did care, they'd hire more people so you weren't waiting 45 minutes on the line for someone in Mumbai to answer you, and they would take things seriously. Believe me, product review is the reality. It's not necessarily what the companies say about themselves. And if they stay in business, it's A, lack of competition, or B, the competition's just as bad as them anyway. So, to excel in business, you don't have to be outstanding. You just have to be better than your competition. And if 3 out of 10 customer service is better than 2 out of 10 customer service, and 3 out of 10 customer service is going to rule the day, I think it's sad.
Yeah. But you really think that's the only thing, is you just have to be better than your competition? Because I know myself as a consumer, it can be difficult to move providers. As a consumer, I can be lazy as well, can't I?
Absolutely. And you know what? They take advantage of that. The banks know how difficult it is to actually change all your banking from one institution to another institution. So they can get away with more, knowing it is such an upheaval to do that. But, everybody has their threshold past which You can't be pushed. And, unfortunately, with the inconvenience of changing banks, telcos, ISPs, all that sort of thing like that, companies know that. So if it was so easy to change and the person provided a thing, back in the 10, 15 years ago, Advance Bank ran a campaign before they were taken over by St. George, said, if you're not happy with your bank, don't close your account, we'll close it for you. One of the most successful campaigns in banking history, never mentioned an interest rate. And all it said is, we'll change everything with a phone call free of charge. And that was the appeal of it rather than the interest rate and whatever. Yeah, inertia is the greatest enemy of both the consumer and the provider.
Yeah, it's incredible when you think about it, isn't it? I mean, that's so simple. Just you saying that, I now remember that campaign, and you wonder why it hasn't been done again. I mean, maybe there's privacy issues or laws around.
My conspiracy theory is that the banks have all got together and said, "Hey, don't do this," because if they all did that and people realised how easy it was to do, then a lot of people would be taking more action, which would stuff up the whole banking industry, as I believe it deserves to get stuff up when it gives customer service. Because if you look at the banks in this country, you love them as a shareholder and hate them as a customer, and I think that is a terrible situation when the most successful businesses in the country are giving the crappest customer service out there to the marketplace. It's a very bad lesson for people to be learning.
Yeah, especially for small business owners. I guess, when you look at the average small business owner, they're going to learn from these big guys because it's what you see every day. It's not a great place to be learning, though. It's not a good training ground.
Absolutely not. And that's the problem out there. And interesting on the other sides, there are people teaching us lessons that we refuse to learn. Like, for example, I hear constantly the major complaint about the department stores, DJs and Myers and whatever, is you can't get anyone to serve you. People go in there and there's such a lack of staff that I've had people say they've walked in with money to spend 10 minutes, couldn't find anyone, walked out again, and therefore that's a real problem. But if you go to an Apple store, there's nerds everywhere. Do you know what I mean? If you walk into an Apple store, they are overstaffed by Australian things. There's always someone there to help you. There's always someone there to try and encourage you and whatever. Apple's probably the single most profitable company in the world. DJs and Myers are really struggling. The lessons are there. We just refuse to learn them.
Yeah. But what do you think has driven these big department stores to do that? What can we learn from that? Is it trying to drive profits back to shareholders, or what's going on there?
Yeah, I think short-term gains. I think a lot of times cutting staff reduces expenses in the short term by, having less costs involved. But what it does to the long-term equity of a business is it depreciates the brand image. Of course, the fact is their competitors are not taking the opposite strategy. Like if, for example, DJs and Apple were direct competitors, then DJs would change their strategy because they're being beaten around the head. But DJs and Myers are actually perceived very similarly in the marketplace. So, it's not like there's an alternative that's doing it better. And we'll, as I say, if 3 out of 10 customer service beats 2 out of 10 customer service, well, the 3 out of 10 customer service will win. It's just not a good lesson for the marketplace.
No. And when you look at Apple, I mean, Apple's it is an experience, isn't it? When you go to the Apple store, you feel like you're on an outing. You're going somewhere fun.
I tell you, I bought my kids a couple of iBooks years ago, and the 45 minutes we spent with the kid was one of the best sales experiences I've ever been through. Do you know what I mean? These Apple people, we were handled for one who did the product knowledge, one took us through the testing, the other, they all sold, no discounts, walked out, I dropped $6,000, and I thought it was probably one of the best experiences I've had as a customer.
Yeah, pretty amazing when you think about that. How you probably spent double what you could have in some other store.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the experience was so great. I mean, the other good thing about someone like Apple, and I think we can learn a lot of customer service lessons by the people that are doing it wrong, but also by the people that are doing it right. Mm-hmm. And one of the good things about Apple that I always hear is if something is wrong with your Apple product and you take it in there, they have no qualms about swapping it out, fixing it,
absolutely.
Making sure you're happy.
Absolutely, and every business should be the way. If you think about it, the consumer law dictates they have to do that. The fact they do it with a good attitude is what separates them from their competition. At the end of the day, if I'm going to kick and scream, I'll get another phone, right? But Apple say, well, why would we create bad will by making people jump through hoops when if we treat them with dignity and whatever, okay, we might have to give a couple extra phones away from the people ripping us off, but we get so much positive word of mouth in the marketplace that their brand is rated so highly which is the ultimate payoff for any business, including
Yeah.
retail or non-retail business.
And do you think the benefits, though, because the benefits of the cost cutting and stopping, having less staff and all of that show up on the balance sheet straight away, is where the benefits of doing it the other way may not even show up on the balance sheet, obviously, I mean, they're going to at some point, but do you think that's one of the challenges is that, businesses are people are managing their business by numbers rather than by making sure they give people a good experience?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? And what you'll find in a lot of companies is, the boss is only there for 5 years, not there for 25 years. So in his short-term period, he wants to have a balance sheet that looks as good as possible. So, he's more concerned with short-term goals than long-term goals.
Yeah.
And I think that's what kills a lot of businesses building long-term brand equity, because sometimes to build long-term brand equity, you need to make investment, you need to do, training, you need to resource the right people and whatever, and that comes up with a short-term loss for a long-term gain, and I don't think enough companies are prepared to do that. So everything is short-term. Our politics is all short-term. Everything's about 3 years to the next election. There's no long-term vision for the country.
No.
So the politicians are sending a perfectly bad example to corporations, and I think corporations act the same way. We want the profits now. We've got to attract shareholders. We've got to do everything to get a short-term profit.
Yeah.
And sometimes that leads to long-term lack of equity in the business. But unfortunately, the main issue is their competitors are all the same. It's not like there's one company. It's not like there's one telco. It's not like Vodafone's leaving Telstra for debt. It's not like ANZ's leaving NAB for debt. It's not like it's not like David Jones leaving Myer for debt. When they're all delivering the poor level of service, trying to get short-term gains, well, the consumer's only got an option between bad and worse. It's not like there's an Apple in the banking industry.
Yeah. And what's interesting? I think. If they would just listen to somebody like yourself or anybody who could raise that level of awareness around their customer service, they could be a force to be reckoned with. They could smash it.
Sure.
But they just, I don't know why they just don't. It boggles my mind.
Well, how do you tell the banks they're getting it wrong when they're producing multi-billion-dollar profits at the expense of their customer satisfaction? But at the end of the day, how do you tell the banks they're doing it wrong when we know they're doing it wrong, but they're making so much money it's a joke, which by the world of market share and the world of economics means, the market says they're doing a good job. It would be nice. I always thought it was quite amazing. I was doing a bit of work 10, 15 years ago with credit unions. I would have thought credit unions, if instead of marketing interest rates, we're talking about the service and the money goes back to the members and whatever, and started to point out how evil and rotten the banks were, they could have made an inroad in terms of eroding the market share the big four banks have. But unfortunately, even when you look at credit unions and building societies, all those idiots ever advertise is the interest rate on their loan, which is always going to be beaten by the banks. I mean, no one, I can't think of too many Australian companies that have said, we will go out there with the service advantage to beat our competitors the way someone like Apple has or McDonald's did in the early days, around there, who said, we're going to make customer service and the experience the differentiator and put their money where their mouth is and employ enough staff and train them and give them the skills to be able to do that. I don't see that too much in the Australian marketplace. And
that's a really good segue, Martin, because I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned in my 20-odd years of being in business is that people don't buy on price and price alone. Now, there are people that will make a decision on price and price alone, but that's not necessarily the customer that you want. So, you've talked about a few different examples there where it's not just about the price. And I think retail right now are feeling like victims of the internet because the internet is so economical that people can undercut on the internet. But, what have you seen where people are definitely in industries where you wouldn't think they'd get away with charging more, but they are? Have you got some examples of that?
Absolutely. There's examples everywhere. Without even, looking at, specific individual corporations, the people who sell the relationship rather than the transaction are making money. Like, for example, if you take the financial services industry, you look at financial planners or accountants, whatever, these guys, it's the ones who build the relationships that are charging higher fees for the same service than the person that's having maybe their financial planning done by the bank officer. So if we take financial services, by chance I've been doing a bit of work in the mortgage broking industry recently, if I get my mortgage from an independent broker who runs their own business, I see the same person for the 20 years of my loan. If I'm dealing with a bank, the odds are that person will change every 2 years with staff turnover, and it's hard to build continuity of relationship and everything out there. Organisations, when I'm running my own business rather than an employee in a large organisation, obviously there is a greater commitment to the customer and being there long term, because as a business owner, it's in my interests that the customer is happy. The organisations that sell those concepts, their years of experience, their personal accessibility, the commitment to the long-term goals of the organisation, what they give back to the community, all of those things, the people who sell those things can charge higher prices and fees than the people who don't sell those things. But what I see, and I see is so sadly lacking out there, there's a lot of businesses that provide wonderful value-added services like that, but they never even communicate it. All they talk about is we'll do the cheapest home loan, or we'll do the cheapest awnings, or we'll do the cheapest security, or whatever it is there. And their point of advantage is actually not the price of the product. Their point of advantage is the relationship and all the things they do to add value, but they just don't communicate it in the marketplace. So the challenge is not an issue of generating value-added services. The challenge is communication at point of purchase.
And why do you think that is? Why do you think they suck at communicating that? Because you would think that would be easy.
I think people are basically inept. Do you know what I mean? I think people are basically, not the sharpest tools in the shed. It doesn't take a lot of brains to, if I go to a shopping centre and sale is in 70% of the windows, it doesn't take a lot of brains to say, gee, if I do something different, I'm more likely to be noticed. There seems to be a herd mentality where we will do what everybody else does, even if it's wrong. I'll give you an example. I was working with a card and gift franchise years ago, and they had a policy that said, if breakages must be paid for, don't touch and whatever. So that was the only signs they had there. And I said, look, if someone broke something and it was worth $30 and they refused to pay for it, would you sue them? And they said, of course, we're not going to sue people for $30. I said, well, why have they got the bloody stupid signs there? Firstly, any psychologist will tell you people are more likely to buy things if they touch them. And you want to give people reasons to come into your shop, not to dissuade them from doing business. So these guys, the franchise owners, did a bit of a brainstorm, and we came up with a sign that they put in the window that said, please feel free to come in and touch everything except the staff.
I love it.
Marketing, you know what I mean? But that's what marketing should be about.
Yeah.
It's about giving people reasons to come into the shop or to do business with you that have nothing to do with price, that are different to everything else. So if you walk through the shopping centre, there's 200 stores with discounts in them, and one store that has something that makes you laugh and gives you a bit of a good feeling. Everything they've taught us in marketing is being different is very integral to to separating yourself from the competition. But if I walk through shopping centres and if I look at ads on television, everything's the same. Everything is the same. And I start to wonder the intelligence of business owners when they keep doing the same thing for 20 and 30 years and keep whinging that it's not working, but they never change what they do.
Yeah, and I think it's that herd mentality you said before. Like that sheep mentality. Everyone thinks you got to follow the people that are already doing this, and I think the big retailers, they've got some fairly high level, accountants and people doing analytics and everything, and they've worked out that it's better to sell something at a loss than to put it in storage and keep it to the next.
Yep.
They've got a lot more, I guess, intelligence behind why they're discounting than the small business owner. But I think the small business owner feels like they have to do that to compete because they haven't been able to get creative. And I think this is definitely a challenge, isn't it?
But creativity is a differentiator. Anyone will tell you that. Creativity, it's about ideas, it's about an offer or whatever. Now, in the absence of creativity and value-added service, well, I'm certainly going to go to the cheapest price. That doesn't make, that's just basic economics. Mm-hmm. But these days, the cheapest price is always on the internet. So as cheap as you have it at a retail store or whatever, I can get it 40% cheaper on the internet, or whatever. It's not even 5% or 3%, So we now, if we are going to give people a reason to do business with us as personal individuals, well, you've got to do a little bit more than a price discount, But as I say, as a professional cynic looking at it out there, I don't see much evidence of change. As I say, people are just doing the same thing over and over again and then whinging as opposed to changing their activity.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, one of the things that I think a lot of people struggle with, and I know in my industry, I've had clients say this to me, is it's easy to measure certain KPIs like profitability or conversion rates, but how do you measure the success of your customer service? Have you got some tips on how people can really quantify whether they're doing a good job or not?
Absolutely. The only thing that matters is sales and profitability. You know, I mean, trainers will tell you. You know, for example, I was doing work in the car industry years ago. Speaking at I won't name the brand of the company, but I was up there, and the speaker before me said, "We have a customer satisfaction index of 91% or whatever, right?" And
what the hell does that mean?
I go, well, that's the point. But then the CEO had also just revealed that nationally dealer profitability was 0.5%. You know, more money throwing your money in the bank. They give it away and almost sell the cars at a loss to sell service, right? So I happened to be the speaker after that, and I'd already been paid. So really, they couldn't do too much to me. So I stood up there and I said, you might say you have a customer satisfaction of 91%. But I can tell you as a customer in this industry and have been for many years, the customer satisfaction at car dealerships is absolute crap and people hate you and you can't sell. And if you could sell, you wouldn't have dealer profitability of 0.5%. And in fact, who cares what your customer satisfaction index is if you're running at a loss? You know, I'd rather customer satisfaction was 60% and dealer profitability was 10% rather than the other way around.
Yeah.
The only measure of good customer service is profitability.
And should businesses be looking at the feedback they're getting on these online review sites? Because I know that's a big challenge for businesses these days, is that they're not real good at handling the negativity or the feedback.
Yeah, look, absolutely. Look, absolutely, you've got to listen to your customers. Look, there's a rule saying if one person tells you something, don't worry about it. But if 10 people tell you the same thing, you've got to make some changes, And the beauty of social media is it gives you the feedback. Now, I know some of it is corrupt and there will be competitors who'll go on other people's websites to sabotage them. And there's not a lot you can do about that, right? But you've got to understand the law of large numbers and you have to listen to what's happening out there because that's how consumers are making decisions these days. The one trend I've noticed with the advent of social media is what the consumer is saying is, I don't believe the seller, let me talk to the buyer. 10 years ago, if you were going to organise international travel, you go to a travel agent and they give you a whole lot of brochures, and based on the brochures and the travel agent's advice, you decide where you go. Well, today you don't even go to the hotel's website. You go to TripAdvisor to find out what people who stayed at the hotel said, and you make your decision based on the customer feedback, not the promotional material. Now, that is an undeniable consumer trend that all businesses have to understand, which means, A, you have to listen to consumers and what they say, even if you don't agree with it and what they're thinking. And the other thing these people have got to understand is you don't fight with people on social media. The thing I find absolutely amazing, you go to some websites and the customer will say something and the customer's not always right. In fact, the customer's wrong most of the time, and some people tell lies on social media, right? But if you are arguing with that customer on social media instead of saying, I'm terribly sorry, I'll take your advice on board, the person reading it just thinks you're a ratbag. They don't know who's right or wrong, but they're going to empathise more with the customer than they are with the business owner. The best thing for businesses to do when they're dealing with social media in that area, and you get a complaint and you're a small business, the best thing to say is, I'm terribly sorry, can I buy you a cup of coffee and discuss this, and take it offline. That way, everybody reading the social media thinks, oh, that person is concerned and they're doing something. But more importantly, you are not having a fight in a public forum about your bad service. And 90% of people don't turn up for the coffee anyway, but it makes you look better to the marketplace, and it looks like you are responsive. And the key with social media and also with the consumer feedback, you must certainly you should be responsive, but you certainly have to look responsive if you want to win over the people who are reading that unbiasedly or as impartial people.
It's funny, Martin. I read a report, a few years back, and it was a report or a study they did as to why people stopped dealing with a business, and only 14% would stop dealing because of product or price. It was like a staggering 68% because of what they call perceived indifference, and that is that you think you're giving great service and the customer thinks your service sucks.
Yeah, absolutely. And that'll be validated time and time again.
Yeah. Have you, one of the challenges, I think, and myself as a business owner, sometimes you just don't know until someone's upset that they're not getting good value or they don't think they're getting good value. So you may think you're giving great value, but they're perceiving it differently. Do you think that having surveys is a good idea, or how do you get that feedback?
Well, look, I don't know whether necessarily surveys is the right way to go, because people will tell you what you want to hear, and the purpose of surveys is to find out what you don't want to hear. Especially if companies say, well, if you fill out this survey, we'll give you a bottle of wine. Well, if you give me a bottle of wine, I'm not going to bag you. So a lot of the surveys and market research that's done is basically useless. Ongoing communication. Just to pick up the phone and say good day to clients, not when you have to sell them, but just just to keep in touch with your client base. It's like one of the greatest problems is the lack of follow-up. For example, I've transacted property, 4 or 5 times in 30 years. I never hear from a real estate agent after the property. Do you know what I mean? But 7 years later, you're meant to go back and you've had no communication with that person, and you wonder why you don't go back to the same person, because the point you made before, it's not indifference, it's perceived indifference. And there's a very big difference between the two, right? The perception is in the mind of the customer, and what one person thinks is good service, another person thinks is crappy service, and it's all about the customer's perceptions, not what you as a business owner think is appropriate there. But the argument in terms of making the transition from a transaction to a relationship is nothing more than communication. But not just communication when you're selling, communication, if you're a real estate agent, to pick up the phone 3 months after they've moved in and say, hey, enjoying your new place, just want to keep in touch and say hi. That's the kind of stuff that affects the perceptions of neglect or indifference or positive service that are created in the mind. But that's the stuff that's not happening. You can spend a lot of money on research, and all you get is that you've got 91% customer service satisfaction. Doesn't help you if you're running at a loss. We've got to understand, are we in the research business or are we in the profit business? And a lot of big companies are in the research business. They just want to have good customer satisfaction. Small businesses, quite frankly, got to make a profit, So you've got to do things that will do it. I've said to my clients, if you really want to get genuine research, you're better off doing qualitative rather than quantitative. Take a couple of groups of customers out, take them in groups of 3 or 4, 5, 6, take them out for lunch, and give them a couple of glasses of wine, because they won't tell you the truth if you don't. And then you say at the end of it, tell us what we're getting wrong. And after a couple of glasses of wine and half an hour of small talk, they will tell you what you're getting wrong, And if you act on that, you'll get more information from 2 lunches with 10 clients than you will from 1,000 surveys going out, giving you a figure coming back.
It's incredible when you think about it. It's not rocket science, is it?
No, this is the thing. The interesting thing. Not only is it not rocket, it's not expensive. We're not saying spend 40 grand on research or 50 grand on advertising. Just spend a bit of time and very small bit amounts of money adding value to your clients and saying thank you after the sale and keeping in touch. So it's not like we're saying this is expensive. Not only is it simple, it's inexpensive to do. Why do people not do it? Inertia and stupidity, the 2 greatest enemies of business.
So you talked before about people giving feedback on social media or complaining on social media. In your experience, have you found that people that have a bad experience are more likely to turn to social media than those that have a good experience?
Yeah, of course they will. Absolutely. Because you've got to look at the motivation. The motivation is when I'm angry, I want to take revenge, right? And social media gives people revenge, and the interest, if you look at how psychology works and whatever, the 5th time you tell the story is better than the 1st time you tell it. If you're talking about a bad experience you've had, and you're telling quite a few people, when you're telling your mates, the 5th time you tell the story, you're much more animated, and you start to throw the odd lie in and whatever, and that's normal, in that area. So people are much more likely to respond when they are in a vengeful mode, when they feel they've been ripped off, than when they're happy. And interesting enough, the old expression of, you'll tell more people about a bad experience than you will about a good experience, that's independent of social media or word of mouth. That's just a truism of human psychology. So the issue is we have to deal with that and pacify those people. And sometimes we need to say, I'm sorry. And sometimes we need to say, I'm sorry when we're in the right. And sometimes we've got to understand we are dealing with perceptions, not reality out there. And, if you want to take money from people, you've got to suck up to them. That's just the law of customer service and behaviour. If you're giving me money, you can crush my ego, but I can't crush yours. That's just the rules of the game.
And as you said before, the customer's not always right, but you want to make them feel like they're right, don't you?
That's exact, and there's a big difference between the two. The customer is wrong most of the time, right? But if you want to get that customer's business, they've got to walk away thinking they're right. That's what customer service, and that's different. That's where I think a lot of people don't get it out there. They keep saying, oh, they've been trained that the customer's always right. And when it's obvious that the customer's wrong or a pain in the neck, they start to think, well, hang on a second, if they're right, I must be wrong. Well, that's not the game at all. The customer's a game. It is a game of customer service. It's about preserving ego. It's about letting that person walk away feeling good about themselves, even if they're wrong. Because, the word of mouth will be determine how they feel, not how you think they feel when they walk out of your shop or walk away from your small business or whatever you're dealing with.
And so do you think it's important for a business to have a strategy to get people to leave positive reviews then online and to give testimonials?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the way you do that is with exceeding expectations. I hate to use that phrase because it's become such a cliche in the marketplace about exceeding expectations. But, for example, you run a dress shop, right? And the woman comes in and she's buying a dress, and when women shop, they drop differently from men. Men just want to buy clothes. Women want to share the experience with the sales assistant, right? They're going in to buy this dress. Oh, I'm going to a party on Saturday night. My ex-husband's going to be there with his new girlfriend. I want her to drop dead when she sees me. That's how women talk. So, what would make good sense, in my opinion, is the Monday after the party, if the owner of the dress shop just rung that person and said, how did you look? Did you have a great party? Right? And let her go on and say, oh, I looked fabulous and whatever. But just the follow-up phone call of just showing an interest is likely to get more word of mouth than the outfit. And that's not happening.
Yeah. So it's just very simple, isn't it? What are you doing to have those meaningful touches with your client base to make sure that they're getting a good experience?
Yeah, and if you look at what stops most people doing that, I work with a lot of businesses. They say, I haven't got time to do that, right? And if you look at the way they analyse their time, they're spending, the old 80-20 rule applies. The top 20% give you 80% of your profits. But if you look at how people allocate their time in small business, most people spend 80% of their time with the bottom 20% of the clients who are giving them most of their aggravation, right? So by doing that, they no longer have time to say thank you or go have a cappuccino with your best client or ring up and see how they are and whatever. And ironically, if they did those things, they would get a better return on investment than dealing with the ratbags at the bottom who you can afford to lose customer 127. You can't afford to lose customer 3, but by spending all your time with customer 127, you are creating perceived indifference in the mind of customers 1, 2, 3, 4 who don't get the recognition they deserve, and they leave you. But it's simple, but it's just not practiced.
Yeah, very, very simple. And I think, this is a great chat because I think, it drives it home for a lot of business owners, and 85% of the businesses that listen to this are SMEs in Australia. And I think for them, it really drives it home. It is simple. It's about putting the time aside. And I think, you've hit the nail on the head there. They say they're too busy. And this is one of these things that's important, but it's not urgent. So it just doesn't get attended to.
Correct. Yeah, correct. Yeah. Look, and why it happens, I can't fully understand it. You know what I mean? As understanding psychology, I cannot understand when the effort is so little, to make the follow-up phone call, communicate the value addeds, do something other than price, why it doesn't happen. I struggle with that when the return on investment of doing it is so large. But the fact is we cannot change the world. We're not there to change human nature. We're there to understand human nature and exploit it for profitability. When you're there in business. So, the one of the things I asked at conferences, they say, well, what if we do this and all our competitors do this? And I say to them, just have faith in the laziness of your competition.
That's a
people
great
are lazy.
That's a great tip.
I'm talking about a group. There might be 100 small businesses at a breakfast. There and they're saying, "Well, I've got a whole lot of competitors. Okay, this sounds good, and if I do it, never does it." Trust me, people are lazy. In fact, there's very little chance that you'll even get off your ass and do it yourself. So have faith in the laziness of your competition and just take some simple action. And let the laziness of your competition contribute to your profitability.
I love it. On that note, have faith in the laziness of your competition. I know we're just about out of time, Martin, and I'm really grateful you've come on and shared your knowledge with the listeners here on the Business Brain Food podcast. How can people find out more if they want to find out more about you?
The best, jump to the website, just martingrunstein.com.au. There's video of live presentations and everything there. And if people want to contact me, they can contact me through the website. It's just martingrunstein.com.au.
Great stuff, gang. And if you're driving or you're on the treadmill at the gym, I will put that into the show notes so you can go and click on that. It's BBF 102, so it's episode 102. So actioncoachanz.com/BBF 102, and you'll be able to get all the show notes there. Along with the links to Martin's website. Now, Martin, there's only one thing left to do, mate, and that's the 60-second scramble. Are you ready for that?
Absolutely.
All right, let's do it. What's the favourite app on your phone?
WhatsApp.
WhatsApp's a good one. Do you have a hidden talent?
No, I've been searching, and I have very few talents at all. And the greater I search, the less I find.
What's your favourite movie?
My favourite movie of all time is a movie called Crazy People, where Dudley Moore was an advertising executive who, in a fit of drunkenness, started putting ads that said the truth, and he was thrown into a mental asylum. But the ads became so successful that they were incredibly successful. So they got all the mental patients to write ads. One of the best movies I've ever seen.
Love it. What's your number one tip for being more efficient?
Just get off your ass and do things. If people spent less time, reading self-help books and just got off their ass and did something, that would be a greater satisfaction.
I always say that is the secret. The secret is to take some action.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, having said that, we're all busy people. What's your best way to tune out and relax?
I just play golf. The biggest problem in the world is a 3-foot putt, and that's the way I want my life to be.
Nice stuff. Well, thanks again, mate, for sharing your knowledge and coming on the Business Brave Food podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on board.
Pleasure. Always good to talk to you, and good luck to all your listeners out there.
And just to remind you, if you are looking to increase your advertising, join Bartercard and access free advertising to thousands of businesses, as well as $5,000 interest-free line of credit to spend in your business. Bartercard have been supporting Australian businesses for over 25 years, and you can register your interested at go.bartercard.com.au/action coach. That's go.bartercard.com.au/action coach.
Business Brain Food.
So it's about this time where I'm going to be cheeky and say, if you're enjoying the podcast, please go into the iTunes store, leave an honest review or rating. You can see why it's so important and why I ask all the time. It probably bugs you that I ask all the time, but I know it's difficult when you're listening on your phone to leave a review in the iTunes store. I don't know why they don't make that easier. That's the one thing that Apple could definitely do better, but I'd really appreciate it if you could leave an honest review and rating. And if everybody that listened to this podcast left a rating, we would have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of ratings. I think we've got like 22 or 23 in the iTunes store. So I get that, it's difficult to do, but I'd really appreciate it if you'd just help me out and you'd leave a review and rating in the iTunes store. It would really help with our rankings inside the iTunes store when people are looking for a business podcast. And now, on that note, by the way, if you are enjoying the podcast, tell other people about it as well. That's the other thing that we really hit on in that interview is you want people to have a good experience, telling other people about the great experience they have, sharing it, and getting other people to join in and listen. So I'd love for you to tell your friends and your family, anybody you bump into that's running a business, that the Business Brain Food podcast is the place to be. All right. Well, thanks once again for joining me for today's episode. Really enjoyed bringing you Martin as a guest. He's, he's like I said, great guy to interview. I love it. I just love his Aussie approach. He's a true Aussie in the way that he talks and just down to earth and makes an interview really, really enjoyable for me, and I'm sure enjoyable for you as well to listen to. Now, I wanted to let you know about a little thing or project I've been working on since last February that is now launching. I have worked together with the SMEA, the Small and Medium Enterprise Association of Australia. If you didn't know, I'm on the board. I'm one of the directors. And I've worked in putting them together with Action Coach and, got a whole bunch of really amazing business coaches across the country to put on workshops in September. One of the things that happened some time ago, I'm not sure how long ago it happened, was Small Business September stopped happening. We used to have it in New South Wales. I know Victoria still have one in August. But we used to have Small Business September, and I used to love it. There was presentations everywhere. You could go and see speakers. You could learn so much, and it was just a good, atmosphere, a good vibe, a good business vibe. So, last February, we were brainstorming at our conference, our annual Action Coach Regional Conference, and we decided that it would be great if we brought back Small Business September, and that's what we've decided to do. It's a great event or a great month for businesses of Australia to celebrate. You are the backbone of the country, so let's celebrate. And the way that we're going to do it, we've partnered with SMEAA, and what we've done is we've put on over 50 free training workshops across the country in major cities and regional towns all over Australia. In the month of September. Now, the way you can find out where your local event is and your amazing business coach presenting this workshop is to go to smallbizsept.com.au. So that's smallbiz is B-I-Z, S-E-P-T for, abbreviated September, because otherwise it would have been too long. So smallbizsept.com.au. Go there and you basically pick your state and then pick whether you're city or regional, and then all your events will come up. And book yourself in. It's a 2-hour, or 2.5-hour free workshop that we're running. And it's, we've partnered with SMEAA. And this is about helping small businesses in Australia get to the next level. So I really want to encourage you to get along to one of those events. Now, as an added bonus, every attendee is going to get a 1-year subscription or membership in the Small to Medium Enterprise Association of Australia, the SMEAA. And that's valued at about $400, but it comes with so much more than that. That's what you would pay for it. The value of being a part of that organisation is far greater than that anyway, and you're going to get free membership for a year just by attending one of these Small Biz September workshops. And, it's an amazing association. I'm really proud to be on the board. And I think that, it's important for small businesses to band together, stay strong, work together. We are the backbone of the country, and we've got to make noise together. We've got to be, we've got to work together to really make our mark in this country. So smallbizsept.com.au, head to that website, register yourself a seat. I'll be presenting several of them in New South Wales, but there are amazing, and I mean amazing business coaches across the country inside the Action Coach Network that will be helping present these workshops. There's over 50 of them, and it wouldn't matter which one you go to, you are going to be educated, you are going to be stretched, and your business is going to grow as a result. Plus, as I said before, SMEAA are going to give you that 12-month membership to the association, which I think that's a really generous offer. So I think that's something you should definitely get along to. All right, well, that's it for today's episode. Thanks once again for joining me. I've really, really enjoyed bringing you the show. The feedback I've been getting is amazing too. Thanks so much for sending the feedback through. But please, if you are enjoying the show, I'll say it one more time and then I'm going, I promise. iTunes Store, leave a review, and I'll love you forever. Until next time, have a profitable day. Cheers.
You can fly high.